Hello and welcome back to the Untriggered Parenting Podcast with me, Paula S Lawrence. So have you ever felt like your child is deliberately pushing your buttons? Maybe you have a toddler and all they say is no. We've all been there. Or, your tween slams their door or your teen pulls away and it doesn't feel good and you feel like it's a personal attack. What if I told you that these behaviours aren't acts of rebellion? They're just your child growing up the way they're meant to. Today we're talking about the ways parents unintentionally weaponize their children's natural development against them and how to shift from frustration to guidance. So let's dive in. We as parents can sometimes interpret our child's natural development behaviours as problematic, defiant or personal attacks, leading us to respond in ways that might shame or control our children rather than guide them. So I just want to start by going over 10 ways that we as parents may unintentionally weaponize appropriate behaviours against our children. So the first one is labelling exploration as disobedience. Because, young children are naturally curious. They want to figure out how the world works, how their body works, how the things in the house works, And, testing limits is a way that they learn. And that could be hard on us parents, right? Because we might see them doing things that they're told not to do as defiance. And we might then, in turn, punish that exploration as opposed to providing a safe way for them to continue to explore, continue being curious, but within safe boundaries. And, it's a lot easier, isn't it, to say, stop doing that, get down, leave that alone, as opposed to providing safe boundary for them to sort of explore within, because that takes more of our time. We might have to watch them more. And, but the truth of that is our job. Because what we don't want to do is stifle their curiosity, that natural way that they learn about the things around them. We don't want to stifle that by continually telling them to stop what they're doing. It's our job to create a safe space for them to continue to learn. The second thing I think that parents may unintentionally do is calling emotional expression manipulation. When a child cries or expresses frustration or seeks comfort, some parents assume that they're being manipulative rather than recognizing their need for emotional regulation support. This even goes back to when your children are babies. I have been in a children's centre and I've heard somebody say, "Oh, please don't keep responding to her when she cries. She knows that when she cries, you'll come." And I thought, well, yeah, that's what we should do. If our child cries, we come. Because what I overheard was somebody saying that the child is crying as a form of manipulation. But if a child only has one way to communicate, and that's crying, of course they're going to use that method of communication to get the attention of their caregiver. That just makes sense. And I am really not on board with the idea that young children whose brains are not fully developed are capable of such high level manipulation. So I don't think that's correct. I think what she was just trying to say was if you don't give the child too much control, and a child knows that crying gets attention. And sometimes what's wrong with getting your parent attention? Maybe they need something. So I think we need to just shift that mindset and shift that perspective and not see it as being manipulative, but maybe what does my child need at that time or in that point in time? The third thing is shaming age-appropriate independence. A toddler saying no or a teenager asserting their opinion can be often labelled or dismissed as disrespect rather than seen as a healthy sign of growing autonomy. As our children grow up, they're going to want more independence. They're going to want more autonomy over their own time, over their bodies, and that is something that is healthy and that we must allow, obviously within safe boundaries. But we don't have to see it as immediate disrespect. If we want to raise children, because I know I do, who are able to challenge things that they see as wrong, then they've got to be able to practice somewhere. As hard as it is, nobody likes, quote unquote back talk. But unless you want to raise a child who's just submissive and who just says yes and doesn't speak up when they see things that are wrong, then we have to tolerate a little bit of back talk, because that's the only way a child is going to practice if we want them to be resilient, who we want them to be leaders and to speak up. We can't raise that kind of child while constantly, dismissing what they have to say or not allowing them to have a voice. It's all about accepting that your child is going to start exhibiting, signs of independence. And as they grow up, that independence is going to increase, and giving them the space to do that, but also working instead of not controlling them, but working instead to maintain a connection with your child as they grow. The next one is expecting emotional maturity beyond their age. Sometimes we tell a child to stop crying, or a teenager to get over whatever they're upset about. And first of all, who has ever stopped crying because somebody just said stop crying? I know I cannot just turn off the waterworks like that. Sometimes we have to allow our children to go through the whole range of emotions so that they can process it. And I know that it's uncomfortable to watch a child cry, or when a child is upset, or when your teen is frustrated about something or sad about something. We just want them. It's not even the fact that we're dismissing their feeling. We might feel uncomfortable with their emotions and want them to stop making us uncomfortable. And also, we don't like to see our children in pain. So that can all make us say things like stop crying, or it's not a big deal, don't worry about it. And sometimes it just dismisses the fact that their brains are still developing and they're still working and growing that self-regulation skill. So it's going to take them a little bit of time, and they should be sort of allowed to have that space to go through their whole emotion until they can calm down themselves. We don't want to just circumvent that process, because that energy, that negative energy or the upset needs to go somewhere, and crying is good for you. So we know, as uncomfortable as it is, we let the child cry. If it's in a place that's appropriate, help them to calm down, co-regulate with them, and not expecting them to handle their emotions in a way that's far more mature than their age dictates. The next one is using developmental behaviours as evidence of character flaws. So if you have a sensitive child, maybe you or somebody else or other people has labelled them as too dramatic. A strong-willed child is just too difficult or stubborn. A shy child is too quiet or rude, and just not allowing our children to be who they are, and not labelling their personality as a flaw, as something wrong, as something to be fixed. We should try to, instead of shaming them, supporting their temperament. So the first thing is not labelling their personality as something that's wrong with them, because they will pick up on that. And it's supporting their temperament and making them feel understood, and that how they are is okay. The next one is punishing natural impulses instead of teaching. We know that young children struggle with impulse control, and this is something that we as parents have to help them with. We've talked so much on this podcast about self-regulation and co-regulation, because our children will lose their cool, lose control, fly off the handle, and it's our job to help them calm down and not respond in a way that's reactive all the time. And this takes time, and it takes work on our part as well. But what often happens is, for whatever reasons, a parent might punish rather than teach their child. But the problem with that is the child may internalize that they're bad rather than learning how to self-regulate. And that's what we should be teaching them, and just not labeling their behavior, because they will internalize that as that something is wrong with them. Why can't they just not react? What's the matter with them? And the truth is, if we parents are always quick to punish and quick to react, doesn't that show that we also are struggling with our impulse control. Maybe we need to work in our co-regulation and self-regulation. So I think it's just taking a pause and taking a moment before we jump into the situation, and we are making a conscious decision to respond to our children and to the situation as opposed to reacting, especially if our child is reacting. We can't react to what they're reacting to. That's just chaos, so we take a minute to calm down and respond to the situation, and then in turn our child can borrow our calm, and then we can use that when they're calm. We can use that as a teaching moment to speak to them about what they can do differently the next time. Just going in with the intention of teaching as opposed to punishing. The next one is interpreting separation as rejection. So this can come up when your child enters the sort of tween stage where they want more privacy, and that can create a little bit of distance with parents. And sometimes as a parent you could easily take that personally and make it about you. But the truth is, it's just developmental. It's something that's part of them recognizing that their need for independence, a bit of alone time, working out the world on their own, and just accepting that as part of their growth, as part of their development, and just maintaining the connection with them as much as possible, and letting them know that you're still there, and when they're ready, when they want to talk to you, you're always available to them, but giving them that space to walk in their independence and to embrace it, while knowing that they can always come back to you when they need to. So number 8 is forcing affection or compliance as a measure of love. Just requiring hugs, kisses, or agreement to prove loyalty or love doesn't sit quite right with me, and sometimes it can sort of cross into that line of disregarding your child's need for bodily autonomy and personal boundaries. And everybody, including our children, need to have personal boundaries, so that's not something we should ever sort of do. Our children shouldn't have to prove their love to us or their loyalty. Saying things like, well, if you loved me, you'd listen. Yeah, our children shouldn't have to work for our love, work for our acceptance, and work for connection with us. That is going to send them the wrong message that our love is conditional, which it shouldn't be. So number 9 is linked to number 8 and is guilt-tripping growth. So saying things like, you used to love spending time with me, now you don't care about me. Just anything that makes your child feel guilty for what's appropriate in terms of their development. So independence, wanting to spend more time with their friends maybe. So again, not taking that as a personal attack and not making them feel guilty for it. What we should instead shift the intention is, as I said before, maintaining that connection, letting them know that you're always there for them, so that they can have access to you when they want, and just let them know that it's okay, that them going off is not going to upset you, and that you're there and their connection is still strong. And the last one is using past behaviours as weapons. And again, with this list, I'm sure we've all done this. I have done these behaviours. So please understand that I'm not coming from a place of judgment, but I'm all about self-awareness and self-improvement. And we all have to be honest about what we do so that we can easily change it. If we don't sit down and go over the behaviours that we want to change and accept that we do certain things, then we can't ever grow. So this is all about growth. So I'm right there with you. But number 10 is using past behaviours as weapons. And that's just bringing up past mistakes repeatedly, saying you always do this or you never do that. You don't learn. It can make your child feel stuck in a negative identity and feel that, again, that they're labelled as bad and that they're not ever going to change or they're not capable of growth, which are all incorrect messages. And we don't want to send our children such negative messaging about how we feel about them. I would love for you to take a moment to reflect on this list And have you ever said or thought these things about your children? And it's okay. This episode is not here to judge you. Most of us have said or done these things or thought these things in our parenting. But, awareness is the first step to change. And just looking over how we interact with our children and just seeing what ways can we improve and what can we do a little bit differently. So I just want to quickly move on to the impact when we as parents misinterpret normal behaviours and respond with shame, guilt or punishment. Our children may begin to struggle with their self-esteem and identity. They may learn to suppress their emotions rather than regulate them. They may associate independence with guilt or rejection. They may become people pleasers or conversely over rebellious, which is not what we want to do. And I want to be very clear that this isn't about blame. It's all about learning and making small shifts. And that's what I really want you to take away from this episode. So how can we shift from control to connection? So I would love to offer you some ways that we can reframe our children's behaviours so that we can respond to them in a different manner. So if we can see defiance as development, so instead of reacting with stop saying no or stop doing that, let them know that, okay, I want to see you make your own choices, but let's find a way to work together. Always making it about teamwork. Validating their emotions. Instead of saying stop crying, let them know that it's okay to be upset. What can we do next? Let's talk about it. How can we solve this problem? What can we do now? Just going in with the intention of teaching and not always about punishing them. And just let them know that, I see that you've had a hard time with this. Let's think of a better way for next time. Let's see why that didn't work this time. Or, reinforcing your boundaries. Okay, I don't think you're ready to do this. Let's try this for now. Again, all about teaching instead of just punishing. And also allowing age-appropriate independence. Let your teenagers have the privacy that they need. Trusting them, really. Trusting the job that you've done on your children and letting them know that you're always there. So in closing, I would love to encourage you to notice your own triggers and reframing your child's behaviour through a developmental lens. And just remembering that your child isn't giving you a hard time. They're probably just having a hard time growing and you're their guide, not their opponent. And I would love for you this week to try this. When your child does something that frustrates you, just pause and ask yourself, is this normal for their age? And how can I guide them instead of control them? Thank you guys so much for tuning in to this week's episode. I hope you got something from it. And as always, I would love to hear your thoughts. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with a fellow parent. Let me know your thoughts on social media. I am on Instagram. Just give me a follow over at untriggered_parenting. And I'll see you next time. Until then.